The project I'm going to show you today is, well, ugly, actually. I was trying to recreate something from my childhood. My grandmother had something like this on her shelf in a living room or somewhere. I can't remember the details, but I remember the shape a little bit. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of trying to stain this green, and it's maple, which is very difficult to stain in the first place. I thought I'd try to make it old and distressed, but I just made it ugly. So if you decide to stick around to see how I made the shape, not how I stained it. Don't do that. Now, Joe told me recently after one of my projects that art is what you say it is. If you make something and you say it's art, then it's art. This is not art. But this, my friend Vera painted this, and it's only her second painting. Keep that in mind. She's actually kind of embarrassed about it, but I like it. I'm going to keep it. So stick around and I won't show you how to make art. I'll show you how to make non-art. I have a blank of maple. It's 3 inches by 3.5 inches and 8 inches long. I'm going to put this on the lathe now and see what I can come up with. I hope you'll stick around and watch. I used a straight edge diagonally in both directions to find the center. Then I used a compass to draw this circle, and that's where I'm going to dish it out. I'll bring my tailstock up using the live center to find the center of the block and help put it in the center of the chuck. I'll make sure this is very tight. I certainly don't want it coming out when it's spinning. Bad words might be said. And that should have me ready to go. As is true of any time there are wings flying around, I want to make darn sure my hands do not go on that side of the tool rest. Could be painful. I'm going to try my 1/4 inch bowl gouge now, see if I can get a cleaner cut in there. Yes, that's much cleaner, much nicer. That's looking very nice in there now. I'm pleased with it. I'm going back to the 3/8 inch bowl gouge. I'm going to try to clean up the face here a little better. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. I've sanded in the bowl and on the face to 400 grit. That should be plenty good enough. Now I'm going to take it out of the jaws and remount it another way. I made a center mark on here again so I can use my tail stock to center it in here. And I believe this is going to hold it fairly nicely. About as tight as I can make it. Don't actually want to put a divot in the side with this because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do when I turn it around. I'm just going to put this here for a little security temporarily while I find out what's going to happen, whether this will stay in there all right. I've never used the coal jaws in this fashion before. Well, only one way to find out if that's going to stay in there, at least without the tail stock. Well, I believe there's a saying, God hates a coward, so guess I'll have to give this a try to find out if it's going to pop out of there or not. Coal jaws are not the most secure. I just can't think of a better way to hold it to turn on this side. I've honed the edge of my 3/8 gouge. This is not something I'd want to try with a dull gouge. I'm going to be taking very, very shallow cuts. It's time to try my 1/4 inch bowl gouge on here. See if I can get a nice clean cut. Definitely a nicer cut, definitely. Try to come from the center with it now. Don't want this wall any thinner than what I've got now. I want to make sure when I turn this around that I can still use the same bumpers. I'm going to make a mark here. I don't want to go beyond here or here. Far enough. I'll just work on inside here. It's a matter of stopping and checking constantly to make sure I'm not getting too thin. I want this to be fairly even. I've sanded this area now. I'm not sure if I'll be able to have the opportunity to do it again in the future when I've turned things. I really don't believe so. And now I'm going to flip this around, put this against the coal jaws so I can turn that side. I've flipped it around now. There's not much wood under these bumpers, but there is enough that it should hold it, we hope. So now I will turn this side, try to match it up as well as I can to this side. Now I think I'll sand this part as well. This is sanded nicely now, but I still have to go in a little further than this to try to match that side. I've put a couple of lines here, and I'll just try to turn to those and then take a look at it. I think that's matched up close enough. I'll go on to the next step now. I have the piece clamped against my miter gauge. The distance between this line at the edge of my miter gauge and this line is the same distance as between the edge of the miter gauge and the inside of the blade. I want to cut this piece off, and I want to do the same thing on all the other three corners.
I noticed that the wood had lifted slightly off of the table saw, so I redid the cut.
After a lot of messing around, I've decided to use this line and this line. And I'm going to take this to draw an arc by placing one side against the line here and the other against here. Then when I draw the arc, that will tell me where I want to clean up inside there. So this is what I want to remove. I'll do the same thing here, here, and here. And then I'm going to take it to a different tool. I know the purists out there are going to say, but that's not wood turning. Well, one of my favorite turners and demonstrators is Jimmy Clues, and in one of his videos he said, I will use any tool, technique, or method available to me to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And I think that's a great way to look at it, and so I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'll show you in a second. Well, here's the tool I'm going to use, my spindle sander. Now, the piece I used to draw the arc is from a knockout cutter I used when I was an electrician years ago, and the outside diameter of it is 2 3/32 of an inch. I didn't plan it this way, but the outside diameter of this spindle is 2 7/64 of an inch, 1/64 of an inch larger. I couldn't have got luckier than that if I planned it. So now I'm just going to turn on the spindle sander and the dust collector and see what I can come up with. I've got it very close to the line. I'm going to do the other 3, and then I'm going to change this to a finer sandpaper to finish them. Now, after changing to the fine sandpaper, I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. Looks nice in there. I've got a lot of hand sanding to do, as you can tell, and I'll be back after I finish that to show you the finished project. I am the first person to admit that I'm not a wood carver. In fact, this is the only carving tool I own. I bought it for some long forgotten project, never tried really learning to carve, but I realized that if I try just sanding this out by hand, I'll be here until Christmas. So I'm going to try a little bit of removal with this tool. See if I can do it without screwing it up too badly. And then tackle it with sandpaper after. I imagine going with the grain makes sense with carving too, although I'm getting some bad work there. Anyway, I'm going to take out as much as I can with the carving tool, and then I'll tackle it with the sandpaper. And I'm sure you don't want to sit there watching my feeble attempts at this. So I'll be back after I finish doing some of this. Well, if you're a carver, you're probably wondering, what was he thinking? But I'm not, and I do believe I've taken a bit of that bump off. Now I can clean it up a little more with sandpaper, hopefully. This is going to take a while, even after carving it. So if you want to give me tips about carving, feel free. Lord knows I could use them. I'm sure Newt is sitting there giggling. And if you want to look at a good website of carving, take a look at, I think it's newteagle.com, and you can see the birds he carves. They're just amazing. Anyway, I'll be back after I do some sanding. As much as I don't like hand sanding, there are times when it's the only way to do things. I've sanded up to 400 grit on the front and the back and on the sides. I think it's looking all right now. But I had a lot of grits to go through. It's sanded completely. I'm going to now apply a coat of my mixture of Zinsser Seal Coat mixed 50-50 with methyl hydrate.
I had hoped that applying this sanding sealer would help eliminate the blotching problem so prevalent on maple. Obviously, it didn't work out that way.
I'll let it sit now long enough to make sure it has time to penetrate and dry properly. I'm going to coat this now with an aniline dye. I'm using a color called Forest Green. It's from Lee Valley. Well, there you go. I believe in showing you the failures as well as the successes. This, I think you know which that is. Well, thank you for sticking with me this far if you did. And don't do the staining like I did. There's got to be a better way. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe. I will try to do better in the future. And have a great day in your shop. Be safe. Take care now.